I find that in my practice, at least when I first started, most parents and students typically think about the school that their kid or the said student is going to attend first. Then once they get to the school, they tend to think about the college major. Finally, after the college major, towards graduation, they then begin to think about the job. Now, in from a high schooler's perspective, it makes sense to think about careers that way because for high schoolers, everything is like your life is basically planned out for you and it's through a series of chronological events. We even name them, right? First grade, second grade, third grade, and so on, all the way to 12th grade. So it makes sense. Okay, well, next comes college. I guess I should figure out what college I'll go to. Then I suppose since I'm here, I should figure out my major and so on and so forth. And hopefully I'll be able to get a job. So again, with the logic of a high school student, it makes sense. But practically, I would submit that is the worst way to think about career fit for a high school student. But the solution is in my experience is actually pretty easy. You just reverse the order of it. You think about the job first, then you find a program or a college for it. Or sorry, job first, then the major or the degree plan that synergizes with it, and then you find a program that's conducive of that career track. And in my experience, it's very easy to kind of tease out of kids what they're interested in. The trick, though, with that is that, in order to help them pick a college major, the trick, though, with that is that interests change. My wife and I do not have kids, but I've worked with them for a very long time now. Uh, those of you who do have kids, I mean, my goodness, they're like us, right? Our interests can change based on what TV show we're watching, right? Has anyone, most of us here are in our 30s or above, okay, which means all of us at some point in our lives, probably recently, or are currently watching a show about murder, right? Um, People in their 40s and 30s love watching shows about murder, okay? Uh, Over the course of watching those shows, didn't you ever think, I could do this. I could be a detective. I could suss people out, right? James is nodding his head. Totally, totally, I could, right? Um, and so naturally, I get a lot of kids who think that they want to be like, criminologists or FBI agents without knowing exactly what that job entails. So early on, thankfully, in my college counseling career, I encountered the notion of aptitude testing. So aptitudes are interesting, and one of the reasons why I think they're so important is primarily because of this these statistics right here. Okay. Uh, Student debt. I think all of us in here have seen some presentation on how awful student loans are and how crazy they're getting, right? Um, we've got 1.5 trillion so far. There's 41 million Americans that still don't really require, significant digital skills. Nearly 100 million do. Our economy is just kind of a crap show right now. It's really difficult to season yourself with marketable skills and then immediately find a job to go into. And one of the reasons why that's so difficult is because interests and skills don't necessarily synergize with job satisfaction. What does synergize with job satisfaction are these lovely things called aptitudes. So let me explain what I mean by that. An aptitude, more or less, let me see here. I'd like to start with what aptitudes are not. Okay. Aptitudes are not personalities. Okay. Most aptitude tests, when you look them up online, like best aptitude tests for high school students, you'll probably get a Myers-Briggs supplement or some and hey, like I'm all for personality assessments. I think they're fun, okay? And sometimes they're even useful, but they're not aptitudes. Uh, Aptitudes are not skills. Okay. Skills take time, energy, and effort to get good at. You can suck at something naturally and then learn and practice and get really good at it. Has anyone seen that movie Rudy with Sean Astin? The little short kid that sucked at football, but he ended up, getting a football scholarship and played at Notre Dame. Uh, he didn't play his entire 4-year career because he was just awful. Uh, until his very last game, he was able to play. That's a very fun American story, like pull yourself up by your bootstraps and, just work really hard and get good at it, even if you're not really kind of modeled and designed to be good at it. I think it's a terrible lesson though, especially to students, right? How much better would Rudy's life have been had he had actually focused on something that he kind of had a knack for? And then lastly, interests. We've talked about interests. Interests are like fuel. If we do something we enjoy, we tend to have more energy to do other things. If we do something we hate, we typically get really burnt out and we don't want to do anything else. Let's take a brief little break on that. Take activities or tasks that we as college counselors or educational consultants have to do. I really love my job. There are things about it though that I don't enjoy. So I found that it's really easy to find complaints more than it is to find solutions. So let's all just briefly, okay, and I mean briefly, let's briefly complain a bit. Show of hands, I'd like to hear from 2 or 3 people. What is your least favorite, your least interested responsibility as an educational consultant? What's the task you enjoy the least? Linda looks like a contemplative Buddhist over here. She is really meditating on this. Go ahead, Linda.
Uh, Data entry. I passed it to JR.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. How come? How come you don't like it?
Ah, the numbers, or I guess spreadsheets.
Hmm.
They just, and I know a lot of people, I see a lot of IECs use spreadsheets, and I don't know what it is about spreadsheets and the data entry. And I'm just like, I don't know. I just don't enjoy it. It's tedious.
I'm the same way. So it's funny. Actually, we're gonna come back to that. Thank you for sharing, Linda. But before I start rambling, let's hear from 1 or 2 more people. Least favorite activity as a college counselor. Feel free to unmute and share. This isn't hard, y'all. Just think about something you don't enjoy doing at work. Surprised Margaret hasn't already unmuted. She's always good for one of these. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone right now. So, I am with Linda. If it comes to talking to people and selling and explaining things, I can do it all day. But this goes into a topic we'll discuss later on. There is an aptitude that we test called it's basically your processing speed. It's visual speed and visual accuracy. I have a very low visual speed. Okay, I would have been very slow and miserable up to my ears in law school if had I have gone to law school because I do not process text very fast. It takes me forever, right? Linda, I'm not saying that's why you don't like it. Spreadsheets aren't exactly the sexiest thing to look at, but that's my reason for not enjoying it. Now, I find that people like James, and James, I'm not putting you in this box either. I find that people who work in technology and code often have a really high visual speed. Their eyes are just for whatever reason really good at scanning text fast.
I love spreadsheets.
Okay. He's like, let's just get it all out here in the open, okay?
Exactly.
I'm a spreadsheet fan.
Yeah.
Which I mean, like, more or less that makes sense. Someone who reads slow, let's see here. If someone reads slow and they inspect the code on a website, they're going to get overwhelmed and stressed out, like I am right now looking at this, right? But if someone like James takes a look at it, maybe not. Okay, we've got someone else coming in. Let's let them inside. There we go. So, so then we know what aptitudes are not. We know that they are not skills. We know that they are not interests, and we know that they're not personalities. So what exactly are they? All right. So essentially, aptitudes are natural abilities. They're cognitive dispositions that we have that kind of predispose us to do really well on certain tasks, or they predispose us to do not so well at certain tasks. And here's the thing about these that's both good and bad. Uh, Aptitudes typically solidify when we're around 14 to 15 years old, and they don't change, like basically forever after that. There's a few exceptions on those. So a lot of the visual aptitudes will occasionally start to deteriorate after a while. Basically, when you turn 40, your eyes start to suck, and naturally visual things just become a little tougher. But still, so what that does then, if you have a high aptitude in something and then you add skill to it, you have someone who's very, very, very good at what they do. So take, for example, I used to use Beethoven. Now I use this person. Now um, I, yeah, anyway, we all know who Adele is, right? Okay. So there are aptitudes, three of them that we measure that are associated with music. One is called rhythm memory. It's the ability to basically perceive and anticipate different beats and synchronizations, right? Another one is pitch discrimination. It's your ability to basically discriminate or kind of tell the difference and nuance between different sounds. And uh, there's also some correlation with the way that you perceive color and even smell. It's a weird one. It gets a little pseudo science fiction-y here, but I find that a lot of chemical engineers are often high on pitch discrimination because they can smell the odors of chemicals. It's a weird one. But string instruments, people who are really good with mastering the accents of foreign languages, they're often really high on pitch discrimination. And then you have tonal memory. Tonal memory it's the easiest one to kind of correlate with music. It's how well do you remember what you hear? Right? So people who are really high on this have an easier time with mastering the speaking component of a foreign language. And yes, they often, if someone who is high on all three of these, often have a very high driving kind of almost like a compulsion. They gravitate towards music in some way, shape, or form. Not always, not always, you know. If they're raised in a household where music isn't really valued, then probably not, right? But often they're they gravitate towards stuff like that. Now, we measure these not by, giving someone a survey and asking them if they like music or not, or if, but we actually do a series of work samples. Most aptitude tests, and there's really only four that are actually legitimate. Uh, One is the Johnson O'Connor assessment. Those are not available. Sorry, that assessment is not available for independent educational consultants to get certified in. You have to send a student to one of their research centers, and I think there's 13 locations in the US. Uh, Johnson O'Connor is the great grandmother and grandfather of aptitude testing. All aptitude testing data comes from them. They've been at it for literally 100 years. Okay. So it's while they don't have the best relationship with IECs, their data is like top notch and the best. So after that is Ames, the Ames Institute, AIMS. Ames is just like Johnson O'Connor. They use the same technology. Back before there were like copyright laws, uh, someone like two people kind of went different ways with Johnson O'Connor, and they still had their data, and they basically kind of created their own, nonprofit to do aptitude testing research. Ames is one of those. They do awesome, really thorough work as well. As an IEC, I actually check their website quite a bit because they have a lot of college counseling, high school and like college prep research they've done on aptitude testing. For example, here's one. Uh, People who perhaps like James, we don't know for sure, I haven't tested him, but right, but let's say we assume James is one of those typical computer science guys that read really fast, that can digest text really fast. As it turns out, the Ames Institute found out that those particular students typically have an easier time in larger universities. If you think of the context of or the academic workload in a larger university, think about it. If you have a college algebra class that's, I don't know, at a pretty big university, like you're looking at a class of possibly 2 to 250 students, right? When you have a class size that big, you have more administrative and automated tasks to do. So what that means is instead of a small class where a student kind of turns in a worksheet, instead they're going to mathhomework.com and they're having to do 50 questions where the decimal point has to be put in at exactly the right spot. If you get a student with a low processing speed, and especially if they're not accurate either, which by the way, that's my combination. I'm slow and I'm even less accurate than I am fast, right? So Mark may or may not have dropped his first college algebra class. May or may not have, right? Yeah, okay. Linda's like, I'm with you. Okay. So that becomes very stressful, especially if you're dealing with a first generation student, a first generation college student. They're like, what the hell is this? This is tough. This is hard. This is tedious. This is not the inspiring higher education stories that I've been told my whole life, right? And when they get more stressed, we tend to put stuff that stresses us out last, right? And when we do that too much, all of a sudden we start getting zeros. And then when we don't do the homework, we stop understanding what happens at class. And one thing leads to another. Before you know it, the student's dropping the class, or maybe they even drop out for that semester. Who knows, right? But again, the Ames Institute, they found that correlation. Higher processing speed, students tend to have an easier time in larger campuses. So with that said, though, let's gear back to the professional side of this. If aptitudes are natural talent, which I think we can mostly agree that Adele is pretty naturally talented at singing. Okay. If not, feel free to email me. I'd love to hear why you think otherwise. Now, skill. What are skills? Hours invested. I imagine Adele has a voice coach, and she has put on dozens, if not hundreds, of performances. She's put in the hundreds, if not thousands, of hours necessary to get really good at her craft. So when you have someone, again, who has both of those, who has natural talent and you know, who puts in the skill and energy, you have someone, again, who's really, really good at their job. So how can we as IECs help students access their natural aptitudes? So I just mentioned the first two nonprofit research centers that do aptitude testing. That's the Johnson O'Connor and the Ames Institute. Johnson O'Connor, I believe, costs, I think, $850 right now to do an aptitude test. Ames is right at $925. So they're expensive. They also take a very long time to do. Basically, if a student wants to do this, and I only found out through aptitude testing because some of my students were traveling to Dallas. I live in Arkansas. They were making a 4 to 5 hour trip to Dallas to get the Johnson O'Connor assessment done. So you're looking at a pretty high price point. And additionally, you've got it takes a whole weekend, right? So like you've got traveling. The test takes, I don't know, between like 6 to 8 hours to complete. Often it's done over multiple days. And then the debrief, the person who kind of walks you through your results, is done by a very experienced aptitude testing technician. The thing is that they're doing that with people that maybe are switching careers, right? They're not necessarily focused on college counseling students. So that's one of the reasons why it's kind of nice for IECs like us to have that training, because, someone like me, I live, sleep, and breathe this stuff. but I do it in the context of helping kids use it, right? So for parents, I mean, let's face it, most of our clients want bespoke, customized boutique experiences, right? They want a very customized program for their student. They don't want, something that's too standardized. So IECs can fill in that role of using this really valuable data to help kids along the college prep process. So now let's take a look here. Let's have a little bit of, let me just show you a little bit about how the things are measured. So this is one of the work samples. The aptitude assessment that I use, which is available to be licensed to IECs, there's two of them. There's U-Science is one, and I'm sure many of you have heard of that one. The other is the Highlands Ability Battery. So I use the Highlands Ability Battery. U-Science is also great. It's a little more inexpensive. It doesn't measure as much as the HAB does. It's your mileage may vary. But this is one of the traits that we measure. It's called spatial relations visualization. I call that SRV because it's a lot easier to say. So if we're looking at this, we show the student a series of blocks. And then the work sample, which is used remotely, right? I give them an account. They make a username and password and then do it on their own time. The program will be like, hey, if we were to flip this thing over or to the side and then to the left, click on which one it is. And then you do that. And then gradually all the tests are timed. And gradually the questions get tougher and tougher and tougher and tougher and tougher. So you're able to really see how well a student actually performs under pressure on these kinds of things. So unmute if you have any if you think you have something clever or not clever to say, either way. Question here. What kind of jobs do you guys think this aptitude may correlate with? In visualizing how things work in three-dimensional space. What jobs might correspond with that? And if you get it wrong, you're never invited to this meeting again. I'm teasing. That's not true. No worries if you get it wrong. Any thoughts?
Engineering, architecture.
Who said that?
Chioma.
Okay, congrats. You can come again to the meeting. Well done. Yeah. Yeah, we're happy to have you. Keep coming. Okay, so yes, mechanical engineering is one of the huge ones. Additionally, architecture. I actually find a lot of people in computer science are high on these as well. Essentially, the higher a person's result is on that, the more likely their work will center around physical things you can touch. If not, it will center around very concrete data. In other words, data that is not fuzzy. Okay. Now, it may be no surprise to you, us IECs, the majority of us, what do you think? Are we high or low on that? The majority of us. Phoebe's really thinking.
I can come in debate on this field for IEC because I personally not really good at mapping, but I love my job, so I'm not sure if that's related. Yeah, but definitely we are leaders of IEC.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. It's tricky, and it can really depend on the IEC in question. Most IECs I've tested are actually really low on this one, which makes a lot of sense. And that's something else that I want to be really clear about. Aptitudes are not IQ tests. Okay? Like you can be low on a trait and have just as many positive things you can take out of that as negative. So, for example, here is I knew that I was going to be doing this presentation today. So one of my clients, I've worked with I worked with her son, and I did the debrief to her daughter today. And so I asked mom, I was like, hey, do you mind if as long as I don't like reveal any of your information, do you mind if I just show your daughter's profile today? She said, yeah, sure. So we'll do that right now. So this is Keen, the young lady I tested today. These right here are what are called the driving abilities. They are the most important ones on the test. You can see that Keen is low in SRV. Okay. The ideal combination of a CEO of a company for the drivers would actually be low on all 5. Okay, so high does not mean good, low does not mean bad. In fact, if someone's high on all 5, they're probably going to be very frustrated throughout their career, because if they're high on all 5, that means they need 5 outlets that they have to kind of, they're going to have an itch they need scratching, that needs scratching throughout their career. I often find, so take, for example, a really good friend of mine, Rhett, I've tested. He is through the roof on SRV, and he's high on all the rest of them too. He is a corporate attorney for an investment firm, and corporate law is the world of ideas, right? There is nothing physical about Phoebe, no one's ever asked you to pick up a 6-pack of corporate law, right? They don't exist, right? It's intangible collection of ideas, right? So when I tested him, I was like, Rhett, how do you not just hate your job? And he's like, well, I work on cars when I get home. Like, I really he's a hobby mechanic, right? So he has an outlet that he channels that into, right? So one thing I love about this is that the career components of all this, let's see here, that I really, really enjoy is once we're done testing them, we see a series of 50 top careers that we use that correlate with their aptitudes. There's other careers we can look at. So Keen, she's relatively high in classification, which is like, take for example, some people are just really intense and quick, like ER doctors, right? They move very fast because they don't really have time to meditate on what they should do with the bullet wound, right? They really have to kind of move fast, right? Keen's really high on classification, but that's not really an aptitude she wants to channel. She's very social, though, very social. Well, selling turns out to be her highest ability pattern. So as we're looking at different jobs and in healthcare and in finance, these are a lot of, in management, these are the ones we're looking at. And then those of you who have career components with your practice, some of you may use ONET. It's the Department of Labor's database for most careers in the US. Right? So you can learn all about the career here. That's great. What we really care about, though, or at least what mom and dad typically care about, is stuff at the bottom. What's the degree? How much does it pay? Right? That's really what we care about. So additionally, one thing that I have found really, really, really helpful are, particularly if you're starting a new practice, is course advising your students on what extracurriculars to take. So take, for example, if I had a student who was really high in design memory, that's where, visual arts become a thing. They're really good at remembering images. If I have a student who's really high on visual speed, James will pat me on the head for this. I beg those parents to get them in coding. It's just such an important tool and skill set to have these days. And if you can read fast, all the better, right? It's going to be a lot easier for you. So again, if you start early with a kid, most of us typically get students when they're in, about the 11th or 12th grade. 12th grade, gosh, I can't stand working with seniors. I like working with seniors, but I don't like starting with seniors because it's like you're like at a breakneck speed, right? Yeah, it stresses me out. But if you get them when occasionally you get those really earnest parents that are like, okay, I have a 12-year-old. What should they be doing right now? Right? Or a 14-year-old. What should they be doing? This is a really good introductory service, an aptitude assessment. If you use UScience doesn't cost anything, I don't believe. I could be wrong. I don't believe it costs anything to be an
25,
say what?
25,
12.25?
$25.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So per assessment, yes, it does cost money. But I think to become certified to give, yeah, it doesn't cost anything. The Highlands Ability Battery is a lot more expensive. It's $2,050. And then there's like I think there's like $150 or $200 a year renewal fee. But the data you're getting is a lot more expansive. UScience, Phoebe, how much what's the retail cost on their, like if I bought a UScience test, around how much would that be? Did you say 40 or 50?
It's more
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I've seen counselors charge 100, 200 for them on their own practice. Um, I charge 550 for mine. I don't do UScience though. I use the HAB. It tests a lot more aptitudes, right? Um, but regardless of where you're at, if you wanted to use UScience or the HAB or whatever, using aptitudes, I'm hoping becomes a more widespread practice in the industry. Just because, again, you're dealing with data, aptitude data, that won't change, right? Now, a student's mind may change. I had a student who really had a lot of aptitude in engineering. They were very shy though. And their senior year, I mean, kids are kids. They change overnight. They go to a sleepover and then they come back with a different personality, right? This kid had become so talkative and chatty and charming. And he was worried that civil engineering wasn't going to be social enough. Well, we looked at his report again, and dentistry kept popping up all over his report. And I started thinking about it. That's a very social healthcare role, right? And he had a really high SRV. He likes fixing stuff with his hands. Teeth, yes, can be gross, but they weren't gross enough to him, right? And so now I've been doing this long enough to where I think I've been doing this for around right at 8 years, right? So now, like, that kid is in dental school now, right? And it's really fun and fascinating. If they change their mind, that's fine. A plan that you change is better than not having one. And that typically is the way that most parents and students, and I'm not trying to disparage or talk bad about my clients. I love my parents, but again, parents and students think about high school and college the way they've always thought about high school. What comes next, right? Not what can I be doing now that will help me out 5 to 6 years from now. So anyway, that is my spiel on aptitude testing. There is an article that summarizes all of this that I wrote, a blog post that I wrote for CounselMore. Aptitude testing. I'm going to pull it up and then I'll put it in the chat. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Also, if you have any questions, you can unmute and ask now. And I'm happy to throw my opinion at it. Or Ronke is also a certified aptitude specialist. If you don't like what I'm saying, Ronke may be able to shed some light on it. So, any questions or thoughts?
Hey, Mark, are you going to share your presentation?
The slides?
Yes.
I sure can, if you'd like.
And then my follow-up question is, you said you and Ronke got certified. Y'all both went through UScience.
We went through the Highlands Ability Battery. That's the more
Highlands Ability Battery.
Yeah,
okay.
That's the more expensive one. Now, I'm going to be honest. I I had just gotten married, and like it made no sense for me to get certified when I did. It was $2,050 I did not have,
Right.
but I just, as you can tell, I'm a real nerd about this stuff. I just thought it was so fascinating. I'm also one of those weirdos that kind of craves to be diagnosed, you know? Like I really want to know kind of what my whatever is, And so anyway, my wife and I came up with the money. I had some parents that were already going to the Johnson O'Connor. And so paying me $550, someone they knew and trusted, versus
Right.
flying out to Dallas, it just financially it made sense. So I was able to recoup my investment really quickly. I know that's not the case. That's not the case with everyone. But for me, it was worth it. But even using U-Science is better than nothing. The only reason why I would still like if you really have to choose, I would say the HAB is because a lot of our students, particularly are into STEM, right? And U-Science only measures one STEM aptitude. The HAB measures two. I know that two doesn't seem all that like
Right.
much more than one, but that SRV, that spatial one, like whether you like to work with your hands or not, that's the one that the HAB measures, and that's really important for
Right.
like that's the difference between a corporate attorney and like a systems engineer, right?
Gotcha.
So I found it was helpful. Also, U-Science doesn't measure the audio aptitude, so any foreign language stuff, it doesn't measure. But again, it's still a great tool. Okay. Does that answer your question, James?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Mark.
You bet. Phoebe, if you get a high school senior as a new client, do you think it's necessary for them to complete an aptitude assessment for college for the college application purposes? Okay. So yes and no. First off, if you can't tell, I have drank the Kool-Aid and I am totally like into all this, right? I think everyone should get an aptitude assessment. However, if I have a high school senior who is in a rush and they just need their essays done, I mean, I'm gonna read the room and probably not push the aptitude assessment. Now, if they uh some parents, even if they're seniors and they're in a rush, will just really like you. Like you guys have heard these comments before, right? And they're the reason we keep doing this, even though sometimes it's hard. Oh my gosh, we would have been lost without you. Thank you so much for helping us through this, right? We love those things. The stuff you want them to put on your Google reviews, right? Uh, those particular people I find are always interested in figuring out what else, like they want to uh, they want to solicit your services. They want to keep working with you somehow. So upselling them towards the end, have you thought about your college major? If they know what they're going to do and they're confident on it, I say that sounds great. But if they're like, she really has no idea, or he actually hasn't thought about it, then I push a little, right? Like I'll push. I'll be like, out of all the services we have, this is one I think that would be really worth your time, more so than test prep, more so than this and that. And then they'll get my spiel, and then they can take it or leave it. Does that answer your question, Phoebe?
Hey, Mark, I have another question. Do you see
Yeah.
value in a student doing both a personality and an aptitude test, or just an aptitude test?
So it really depends on what you're wanting.
Okay.
So personality assessments, and the HAB does measure 4 personality traits. Introversion and extroversion is one. Personality assessments do really well at predicting behavior in a social environment. Okay. So if there is a situation where that would be useful, then yes, there would be absolute value in assessing that. However, and James, as someone who's worked in IT for as long as you have, take someone who codes, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's very little social about coding.
That's
Now
right.
I know in like the show Silicon Valley, right?
No, you're
They
absolutely right. I used
Yeah.
to coach junior engineers. You can, as you grow your career, as I moved up into the C-suite, You can continue to be the engineer that sits behind the desk and you're never put in front of executives because you don't know how to tell a story or sell yourself, or you become the engineer that can do both. So you can sit behind the desk and code, but you also can get in front of, you have an executive presence, so you can get in front of the C-suite, tell a story, tell a narrative, and be able to lead people. So you need a combination of both. But most engineers are the ones that sit behind the desk that never get in front of the C-suite, and they never learn those skill sets. So that's
absolutely, yeah. And in an entry level position, you need someone like that who can do that. But James, and I hopefully you'll agree with me. If not, no worries. Just because you're quiet and you can sit behind a desk doesn't mean you'd be good at coding.
That's correct.
Right?
100%. Yep.
So a personality test would tell a student, hey, you're good at the not talking to people and focusing on something, right?
Gotcha.
But it won't tell you, do you actually have like, can you read fast? Are you good at envisioning the way systems will integrate together? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
You bet. Ronke, you got a comment or a question?
Comment.
Hit me.
What a benefit that I've found for doing this, especially in the immigrant community, African American community, is so that parents will not pigeonhole their kids into, you must go and be a doctor, you must go and be a lawyer because we're investing all this money in you, and those are the only professions that exist. I was working with a family, 2 doctors, and even though the mom has moved away from majorly being a hospitalist and working in a hospital, she has a coaching side business, and she only does hospital. She only practices medicine very part-time. She still couldn't devolve herself from pushing the kid into STEM, even though art was obviously one of the kids' passion. It's like, we are both doctors. What do you mean you're gonna be what you like art, but she's also good at math? It's true, yeah, she's also very strong at math. But through doing the HAB and looking at all the possibilities, they're like, wow, okay, animation, digital design, okay. So she could do like computer science, that she could do a technical piece of art. Okay, that sounded better to them than, oh my gosh, it's going to be an art. What are we 2 doctors doing with an art student? So the girl is happily going into animation. She's going to start the fall.
Awesome.
They love the results. They saw. It's very interesting when the parents are listening to the debrief and seeing what the test shows in the kid. I remember Mark did the assessment for my son when I was getting certified, and I just wanted to test it out. And almost everything that he was saying was like, oh wow, that is so him. He's been like that since he was 8. He's been like that since he was 7. Like, the parents see it. They see the ability, they see the attitudes that this kid has demonstrated in very many different ways. I loved it. Like Mark said, he's geeky about understanding himself and everything. I loved understanding.
I'm just vain, real vain.
Understanding myself, and the parents have had sit through the debrief. They were fascinated at how accurate it was and how they have examples of exactly what it's saying. So I love it.
How long did it take both of y'all to get your certification? Just
it's so I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, okay? Like it's 2 days, fully remote, 8 hours. Okay, you're looking at 16 hours. Okay, and there's no ducking in and out, like like it's kind of like an abbreviated graduate level class, kind of. Then you have to do a mock debrief with Dory. The goal of the certification isn't to kind of like crack your skull open and pour everything we know into it. It's to make sure you don't look like an idiot when you give your first debrief. Right. And then there's people like me, the Highland Company, they occasionally contract me to help consultants, like basically if Dory is what I call the matron saint of aptitude testing. She's been doing this for 30 years, an industrial psychologist. No one knows it better than she does. But when it comes to college counseling, if her plate's full, I'll hop on a 15-minute call, and help a counselor kind of figure it out. But as long as you can show up for, both days, and then you can, do a debrief. Yeah, that's really
Not
it.
to forget, there's homework on day one, but it wasn't bad. It was actually fun to do the homework.
People say I don't remember doing any whenever I did
it
it.
was so fun. You didn't remember, but yeah, that was homework. But it's practicing what you just learned that day, so it helps solidify like some more scenarios.
I gotcha. I did it 10,000 years ago, back when you could fly out there to do it. And y'all are going to be really sad, but it's actually in Atlanta as well, where we had to do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it's fascinating. And one other thing that I'll piggyback off of what Ronke said. I have so I live in Little Rock, Arkansas, and in Little Rock, Arkansas, surprisingly, there is a very high population of Pakistani Muslims here, and lots of them work in healthcare. And so, I work. I had a student that was kind of like the one that Ronke was talking about. It's like, oh yeah, you can go anywhere you want. Pick the med school you want to go to, right? But here's the thing: there's one aptitude called time frame orientation that impacts how long a student kind of thinks towards the future. A lot of those students were very low. They're more into like short term, like if they were an architect, they'd be a residential architect, not like a civil engineer, right? Lots of tech jobs or STEM jobs that don't have to do with healthcare only require a 4-year degree. In like most engineering, most computer science, it's a 4-year gig, and as long as you've networked enough, like you're good. That is very appealing to a lot of students to not have to be in school for 10,000 years. And parents, even if they're dead set on, med school and all that, they start to open up to it and get nice to it as well, because now they're not having to pay for as much school. Anyway, I don't mean to put a hat on top of a hat of what Ronke said, but I definitely attest to what she's saying. Well, guys, we have kept you way over. We are so happy you guys came. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you all next time, and peace out. Thanks again for coming.